at the district level. Out of these, 26 DMHPs have both at the primary care level and at the district level. Ambulatory services are available in 17 districts. Inpatient facilities are available in 53 districts, that is beds are available because the DMHP visualizes that you would have a 10-bedded facility at every district hospital. 11 DMHPs have reported availability of essential drugs and its dispensing to patients. See, 11 out of 123 is you can guess the numbers. 10 districts have mental health helpline and most of these are in Gujarat, etc. 43 districts are rendering mental health services both in schools and colleges. The re-strategized mental health program visualizes school and college counseling, work stress management also. So these are activities which are at beginning. Next one. See, when we talk about the limitations, of course, there is, like I said, getting this team, so which we have identified. So we need to think whether that's the right model, whether we have a psychiatrist-driven model only. Getting them in place is not an easy task. There is a shortage. Again, when you come to drugs, I mean, if you're talking of inpatient facility, outpatient facility, outreach activities, I think at least when you do the reference, because at the district level you're doing the reference, at least drug availability should be assured. But that is also often not the case. Then standardization of activities, I mean in what each DMHP should do. There's nothing called a set of activities which each one is doing. Yes, some of them are doing in Maharashtra. Of course, all your states have evincing. Some have a helpline, some do outreach activities. So there is nothing, definite that, every DMHP is doing all these activities. No. There is no effective strategy for monitoring and evaluation, lack of accountability and interdepartmental coordination between the departments. I say this specifically because very often the mental hospitals or the medical colleges are part of the medical education division. DMHP itself is being run by the health department, so there are issues of coordination, etc. Next. Some of the new experiments and the thing, Jharkhand, states have gone ahead. The states do realize this is something that has to be done. Some of the states have taken it on their own activities to start from their own funds, though not from the central funds. Ranchi Institute is running an outreach awareness. This is not not an exhaustive list, but some of the ones that I've tried to capture. State government has covered 16 districts to provide services on the DMHP pattern. It's their own teaching and training materials are there. There is a 24-hour helpline. Next one. Tamil Nadu, again, it's the only state which has a full-time state nodal officer. Very often the person looking after is present here. It's very often the person looking after is also doing emergency. If you have a psychiatrist in the hospital who's looking after the program, he or she is also doing emergency duty, is doing autopsy, is doing everything except psychiatry or attending or giving service for the mentally ill patients. So district level society has been formed. Here they have a separate rehabilitation services are being provided to the treated mentally ill patients. Then you have one, the Katuam. I think this has been renamed, this project. This is still, so this is available in 8 districts. Then they were also one of the first to start those family federations where users, and family members were bred. There's a suicide prevention center and management program. You also have a suicide prevention programs in Amravati and some in Gujarat. Next one. Rehabilitation services. Now when we come to rehabilitation, the National Mental Health Program does not cover rehabilitation aspect, as it comes under the ambit of the Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment. I think, when we say, very often when we talk about DMHP, we say it's modeled on the Bellary pattern. But the Bellary pattern did have an active and essential element of rehabilitation, trying to integrate the recovered patients back into the community. But probably the reason for not adopting it is because the kind of, allocation of business that we have between the ministries, and this is seen as an activity within the Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment. And within the ministry, they have some schemes, which is the one is the Deen Dayal Disabled Rehabilitation Scheme. It's voluntary actions for persons with disabilities, where they provide halfway homes for psychosocial rehabilitation of treated and controlled mentally ill patients. And you notice the word controlled. Okay, so scheme for national scholarships for persons with disabilities for pursuing studies. and a trust fund for empowerment of persons with disabilities. But what would a good rehabilitation strategy would be, I think would be to start daycare centers attached with a rehabilitation center. The strategy would have a dual advantage. A patient would remain in the institution during the day so that their relatives wouldn't have to, because very often when we talk about mental illness, it's not just individuals but families which are affected. And I think this gives them the respite, but also it ensures that the person returns back home, is able to live within the society, and he or she would be gainfully employed, have job satisfaction, and chances of relapse are also decreased, and the chances of exposure to exposed emotion in patients is also would be, and the chances of relapse is also much less. A scheme may be designed for rehabilitation process for those who are not having any backing or lack of support in the community. It could be on the basis of quarter-way homes, supported, shared, home-like accommodation for all patients, ready to be discharged but are not discharged due to families not being able to take them back or due to lack of support. They can also be placed in accommodation. There was this, you recall there was this orders of the Supreme Court that talked about setting up these homes, these are necessary. Then this accommodation could also be an existing ward converted into a home-like environment. Such experiments are happening. I would quote the case of Rinpas in Ranchi, Tejpur, where they are also thinking of whether they could start a rehabilitation home. Because in Tejpur, you not only have people who are there staying for long terms, but are not being taken back by their families. But Tejpur also has an issue of people being just dropped there, and they have to rehabilitate them, and there's nobody who to go back. But this is not a regulator. Could they start it out as this thing so that there are employment opportunities, there are sense of community within that? Could they do that? These experiments are being considered. Next one. A psychiatric rehabilitation, I think if we talk about psychiatric rehabilitation, the Board Committee report stated that in occupational therapy, we have a powerful therapeutic weapon for psychiatric patients. Organized systematic work is better treatment than the careless haphazard occupation in some of the hospitals. The important thing is to create throughout the hospital an atmosphere of industry and to make occupation an activity that is approved by the patients. I mean, this statement of course reflects the emphasis that occupation being used as therapy itself, it could be concerned. Next one. And I think some of the analysis showed at that point of time, CIP had one of the best occupational therapy units in India compared favorably with those abroad. Persons were deputed for training to Ranchi, and as a result, vocational training units were set up in Mysore and Chennai. It's a sad reflection that 50 years later, the National Human Rights Commission on Quality Assurance in Mental Health case stated that rehabilitation services were practically non-existent in the 40 government hospitals situated in 18 states of India. This was one of the statements that NHRC brought out during its review after that. While 64% reported some rudimentary form of rehabilitation activity, only 4 hospitals had structured occupational therapy facilities in the form of daycare centers. These were at NIMHANS Bangalore, Karnataka Institute of Mental Health Dharwad, the Institute of Mental Health Chennai, and the Mental Health Center Trivandrum. This is based on an NHRC review of the entire country and the 40 hospitals following the Hervada and other this thing. There is need to develop a cadre of well-trained and qualified rehabilitation workers who have the basic aptitude and the skills to work with people. That's very important before you think of setting up this thing. An understanding of the felt needs of the consumer, both patient and family, will help us evaluate whether existing services are addressing their needs and also help in planning a more effective service delivery. The most important felt need expressed is the need to find a job. And also when we say it's not that several current studies have also corroborated, but when you talk about finding a job, of course it provides a sense of wealth, self-worth, social status, but patients with mental illness or people living with mental illness often have difficulty finding and holding jobs and open employment. So there is a need for vocational training and income generating activities that can be undertaken in sheltered workshops or daycare centers. Employment provides not only a monetary recompense but also latent benefits, non-financial gains to the worker, which include social identity and status, social contacts and support, a means of structuring and occupying time, activity and involvement, and a sense of personal achievement. In order to help the mentally ill patients, I think the government can provide incentives to industries which can employ mentally ill patients with a mental illness or mentally challenged. Government of Gujarat offers an example worthy. They have issued a circular according to which products made by the rehabilitation centers, hospitals for mental health can be purchased without issuing tenders. It also provides tax benefit, free bus, railway passes are concessional for them to ease the burden when they have to move and work out. So when I talked about this thing, see, we have never seen it as, within the program, whether, the aim of the program is not to create employment. The aim was, it's more a treatment and care kind of thing. But you'll have to recognize that within the society, within the districts where you have, because we have 43 mental hospitals apart from the 3 which are in the government sector. Most of them have turned into open wards. They've been deinstitutionalized, we like to say. But we need to look at kissing. There are still patients who would not like to be taken, but they need to be gainfully utilized, employed, and for their own self-worth. It's a talk about the rights of their persona. It's not because what we get out or anything. But then we need to provide those opportunities. Can we look at it? Maybe the RIMPAS experiment which they are trying to do, whether it can be a setting, have community created, maybe outside the hospital premises, but maybe within the distinct precincts itself, where they can be gainfully employed, where they can be given, and can government look at concessions and things. Now, whether it's within the health sector or within the social justice, probably we need to coordinate, we need to look at these experiments that are happening, we need to ensure that they are there and is available to the patient. Thank you.
Thank you, Sujya Krishnan, for the DMHP plan. Probably to look beyond treatment to more other rehabilitative inputs. I would like to request Dr. Parashuraman, Director, Tata Institute of Social Sciences, to make the next presentation, which will be on skill development in India.
Good morning. Thank you for inviting me to this very important conference on enhancing employment opportunities for persons with mental health issues. What we have been working at the Tata Institute of Social Sciences in the last 1 year is to look at how do you enhance the skills of people who are disadvantaged and marginalized. I think that has been included in the presentation. To disadvantaged and marginalized communities. One of the major issues which we are seeing in the country is that 77% of India's population is poor and vulnerable. Okay. There is no consistency between the nature of economic development. Broadly, the relationship between the nature of economic growth and poverty alleviation, reducing deprivation and marginalization, there is no inverse relationship at all. I think if there is any relationship, the correlation is so very feeble. And it has a large proportion of Indian population. Either you have people moved out of lands and livelihoods from rural areas because you need greenfields development and all our SEZs and whatever you can call up. I think there is a huge movement of people from lands and livelihoods, and the agrarian crisis has made it far more difficult. Agriculture has been the major casualty in the last 15-20 years. And from the urban context, you have a large number of people are being outsourced from a formal sector to informal sector, and huge imports from Chinese and China and elsewhere meant that the informal sector is being further displaced. Actually, this has been the problem. We have Mr. Rahul Gandhi would tell you that about 250 million people in the country are nowhere people. They don't belong to urban areas, they don't belong to rural areas. They are there. Wherever they can find employment, they are moving on. So, this major concern is that how people who are otherwise not part of the modern employment sector can be provided with the skills so that they can find employment in the new sectors of development, as well as enhance their traditional skills so that they would be able to find employment. Like in the sense, all our weavers are finding it difficult primarily because they are not able to compete with the computerized designs that come from Japan and China actually. Now, how do you enhance their abilities? So we have been working on the concept of creating a national vocational university specifically focused on the poor, marginalized and disadvantaged communities, the Dalit, tribal and women and nomadic and denotified tribal groups across the country, and that is the idea we have been working on. I will skip all those things, the National Skill Development Council and all those stuff. What is the central idea? The central idea is that creating an ecosystem that enables learners to step into the world of work on a quick start mode and lay a learning and growth path that would allow the learners to continue learning and achieve their potential by remedying the current situation of dead-end job system in the vocational sector. Who goes to vocational education in this country? If you can't go anywhere, you go to vocational education. But that may not be there. I think the 12th plan, what the government of India is trying to do is to make vocational education as part of the higher education process. Make vocational education not as a dead-end job opportunity to that of people who would be able to move from a lower level of skills to a higher levels of skills and improve their opportunities to gain employment of a higher quality. So if you enroll into a certificate program and you move on to gaining a diploma degree and then an undergraduate and a postgraduate degree, so you can move on. It also provides for a vertical, a horizontal movement. Someone who comes into call center, it's a burnout job. Now, how do you enable those persons to move into service sector, in other sectors, where hospitality sector? So this is what we have been envisaging in the last few years. So the key challenge, of course, is to invite the raw and stray rural school dropout and train them to a level of tradesmen, certification. I will stand where, ma'am? I will stand here. Quite an opportunity for the people who are unemployed, dropout, and vulnerable groups to be able to gain opportunities in skill development. It is more of a German model whereby you bring in an apprenticeship system whereby identify, assess, and place them in industries. And so where they will have linkage between the industry and the training center. And we don't need to create any much infrastructure in the sense that much of the skills that needed to be developed may be provided in the form of simulators. You don't need to create. Say for welding, what we have done is that we created a world-class curriculum by the best people available in the world. I think the person who is leading that center of excellence is India's finest underwater welding expert. And he brought in a whole lot of experts to develop a curriculum and get it certified by the best institutions in the country and the world. And then we have brought in the Tata Consultancy Services to develop the simulator framework, whereby the training can be not just located in one single place, but across the country. So this is the model which we are working on. What Tata Institute of Social Sciences has done is to create a school of vocational education and we are going to experiment it with about 5 verticals in industrial sector. Okay, so this involves mobilization of people in the rural sector and urban sector, job placement, because link it up with, we are working with the Confederation of Indian Industries and FICCI and other industries, link them with the job training, and then it moves on the next level of skill development. You know, you can move on from there. So someone who joins as a welder can move on to a higher level actually. So currently we are demonstrating with 5 industry verticals and 2 social verticals. The social verticals are child development, you know, child care. You know, you need many people with capability to be able to look after children, and elderly care. And we will be expanding to other sectors of social sector as such. Now, how do we? It is not all mentally people with mental health issues may be able to gain access to the kind of program that is being put in place. Okay? So what we have been exploring a number of different options, but one of the very fascinating options that is, there are a number of options which we have identified. One of the options is that under the World Bank program, the government of India has been empowering the ITIs in the country to develop short-term skill development programs, whereby people with varying capabilities, different capabilities, will be assessed and put through, identified and located in a training capsule. The qualification is 4th standard, you know, if they have passed 4th standard, if they are aged between 14 to anything. Okay. The fees is about 800 rupees. And if the person completes the training, the fees is returned to the person. Yeah, fees is returned. So the idea is that you collect fees